What two guys have a podcast and both hate Auburn? These two guys.
You are Locked On. You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. We'll talk about Gametime in just a little bit. Thanks for making us your first listen. It is Iron Bowl Eve, Jimmy. And, I've been thinking about this because it's been sort of weird. Zach Blackerby Zach does a fantastic job for Locked On Auburn. No matter what you think of Auburn, he does a fantastic job. And we had a crossover podcast. And it was just odd. I mean, the more I thought about it, it just doesn't feel like a typical Iron Bowl. Even I, who is always worried about how Auburn will play when it comes to Alabama, even I feel weirdly confident. I guess that's the word. But that makes me, in a way, that makes me feel even more worried. So I don't really know what I'm feeling. I feel like this game has a bigger meaning, though, than it probably should. I mean, it definitely has a big meaning in terms of effect on the playoffs. It definitely has a big meaning in terms of Alabama's viability to make the playoffs, at least. But I think it also has a big meaning in the sense that, it's going to be a huge recruiting weekend for Auburn. But Alabama's going to be there, too. So that's the thing. Yeah, they're there as guests of Auburn. But if Alabama performs very well, it'll help Alabama some too. So I think this game just has a lot more meaning than people want to let on. Make any sense?
Yeah. I do know this about the recruits that are there. I've always felt this way. And it's not just Alabama, Auburn, although I think maybe more so than other regular season games, that the impact it will have on recruits isn't the seniors. I think the seniors, the hay is in the barn. Almost all the seniors are committed. There's very few guys out there that are still deciding, and not very many deciding between Alabama and Auburn, except maybe a couple of flip candidates. I don't really think with the seniors this is going to have much of an impact. Where it has I think a very, very big impact is ninth graders, 10th graders, and many of whom will be at the game with comped tickets from Auburn. A lot of them are being introduced to the Alabama-Auburn game. This is their very first Alabama-Auburn game. Their feelings about both programs are being formulated, maybe not from a fan sense, but from a business sense. I think too many fans out there make a terrible mistake of looking at this through the prism of their own eyes instead of a 16-year-old. They think, hey, I'm a 44-year-old fan, so my feelings about Alabama are the same as a 16-year-old recruit that happens to be a fan. That's not how this works at all. Most of those kids make literal business decisions, not the same decisions a 40-year-old fan would make. So, but I do think that the impact of the game in terms of recruiting happens more so with the younger players that are there than the older kids who've pretty much already made up their minds. 10th and 11th graders have not made up their minds yet in general, and they can be swayed. And I think they can be swayed by game outcome to a degree. The biggest difference between the two programs is Alabama is a Ferrari and Auburn has a blueprint on the chalkboard of how to build a Ferrari. And that's literally the difference. Auburn is promising, hey, we're building this. Alabama's like, we're already built. And I think that the kids that are making decisions between the two programs, that's really the number one thing, more so than NIL, because both teams have very competitive NIL programs.
Yeah, I do think both teams, at least for the time being, are approaching NIL a little differently, at least based on rumblings I have gathered, that
True.
Alabama's NIL approach is, okay, we have a range that we will accommodate, but we're not going to go above and beyond unless you are the absolute cream of the cream of the cream of the crop. And I think Auburn right now And again, this is very understandable. This is not an insult to anybody who's listening who's an Auburn fan. I think this is very understandable and actually the correct way to probably run your NIL at the moment. I think Auburn is probably in the posture of overspending a little bit for guys Alabama wouldn't overspend on right now because they want to get them. Because they feel like, okay, we got to get the dude. We might have to overpay right now. And I think later on they might adapt more of okay, we're going to chill on overpaying some of these guys. Am I wrong, Jimmy? Because I get the sense this is correct.
No, I get the sense it's correct. We don't know. For one thing, NIL and the collectives that do this are purposefully very private.
Right.
I get frustrated when I'm asked on the board, tell us exactly how Alabama's NIL works. And my response to that is, okay, tell me how Tennessee, Oklahoma, Arkansas, USC, and Penn State's works. You don't know that either.
Because it's not
universal.
No one
knows.
It is not universal.
No, what I'm saying is that no one knows specific numbers. No one knows specifically anything. And that's all by design. All these collectives act like it's CIA secrets, and you can't get a lot of information out of them. But my general sense is the same as Luke's. I think exactly what Luke said is the same sense I have. Just put it another way. I think a 4-star, and by a 4-star, I mean a player ranked, low top 100 all the way down to 200 or so. I mean, a typical 4-star. I think a typical 4-star means more to Auburn right now than it does Alabama. Does that make sense? I mean, a kid ranked that high would mean a ton to Auburn right now, not as much to Alabama.
Let me say this, Jimmy.
There might be an NIL disparity in regard to those kids. Now, 5-stars or the guys that me and you jokingly refer to as 6-stars, or on 3, we literally call them 5-star plus. Now, Alabama needs those guys. You know what I mean? But the Alabama needs those guys. And Alabama wants everyone that they're recruiting. I'm just saying there are some players out there that would be more valued by Auburn than Alabama. And that makes sense, right? I mean, now how you rank players, how you look at players is going to differ from staff to staff and collective
philosophy to philosophy in terms of offensive philosophy, defensive
Sure.
philosophy, 4-3 versus 3-4, that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing is, I think an Auburn fan listening to this might get upset saying, oh, you're saying we have to pay more to make them come to Auburn. I'm saying you do right now. I'm saying you definitely do right now. And I'm saying the kids have the leverage on the whole with Auburn right now versus Alabama. Alabama can afford to be a little pickier right now because of the reputation they have of putting guys in the league, of winning championships, et cetera. Right now, Auburn might have to overspend a little bit. Now, if Hugh Freeze continues to recruit very well, they won't have to do that. That's not an insult. That is just the nature of the beast. And I think that, right now, for instance, Arkansas would have to really get their ducks in order to overspend to get guys that Auburn wants. I mean, that's why Walker White's going to Auburn instead of Arkansas. He grew up an Arkansas fan, but he's going to Auburn because if Arkansas stepped up their NIL game to a gazillion dollars, now maybe he changed his mind, but it's not apples to apples for everybody right now. And again, that's not meant as an insult. Alabama is going to have to eventually probably overpay when Saban goes away. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. But my point is about the recruiting. There are going to be a lot of dudes there that are looking at Alabama and Auburn. Now, you're right. Not all of them. If they're seniors, they're probably not so much. But I think they're going to be – like Ryan Williams will be there. And I still feel very good about Ryan Williams no matter the outcome of this game. I still feel very good about Ryan Williams. I'm just saying it would certainly make me feel better if Alabama won going away and we threw 5 touchdown passes. I would like that a little more.
I think just what Alabama can do in this game in terms of influencing prospects is, again, the biggest difference between the programs is Alabama's Ferrari is already built. Auburn's is on the drawing board, and proving that the Ferrari is still functioning at a high level. I mean, see, we have a Ferrari. See,
we
showing
did
the
oil
Ferrari
change early in the season.
Exactly. I mean, just showing that, hey, we're still Alabama, and you know what you're getting. I mean, you know what you're stepping into. I think that's what Alabama can accomplish. in this game. And I think Auburn's real accomplishments, to be honest, and we've already talked about it for 10 minutes, Auburn's accomplishments in this game, Luke, are sitting in the stands. I mean,
Exactly.
I think everybody knows Auburn's not a built football team that's not playing well. They just don't have enough dudes. And they have dudes sitting in the stands, and they need to sign them however it is that they need to sign them under today's rules as they exist. So that's the challenge for Auburn is recruiting better and signing dudes. The challenge for Alabama is to keep it going, which takes a steady infusion of dudes that they've pretty much had since 2008 and continues to today, even through NIL. And I've said before, as much as we've talked about recruiting in NIL, go back to 2021 when NIL began to be legalized and became kind of the law of the land. NIL in 2021, from 2021 to present, no one in college football has signed more good players than Alabama. Some teams have signed maybe as many, arguably, like Georgia, but no one is out recruiting Alabama in the NIL era. So it bothers me when I read fans that are always panicking about NIL, because I'm like, it's going pretty well. In basketball, recruiting has never been better than it is at Alabama right now, and we're in the NIL era.
Big game this afternoon, by the way, for those interested, at 6:30 against Ohio State. But when we come back, we're going to give some predictions.
I think it's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. Don't want anybody to be late.
Iceberg Goldberg. But it may be a long national anthem for all you know, Jimmy. How about that? Smarty
Could
pants.
be. Could be.
Anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk about we're going to give some predictions. We're going to talk about some guys we think will have memorable days. We're also going to bring up this Evan Stewart rumor. This is so fascinating to me. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Right now, Jimmy's been talking about Ferraris and Ferraris that work and Ferraris that are on the drawing board. Well, if you have a Ferrari, you might want to go check out eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks. Everybody loves a roof rack on their Ferrari, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that big old win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. First of all, Jimmy, I know I wore this for my crossover, but this is my new Jalen Milroe Alabama rowback sort of hoodie looking thing. And I love it.
Awesome.
I've been wearing the bejesus out of it, so I'm going to keep doing it.
I think it's awesome.
This is another. I mean, I'm hoping. I think Milroe gets something from these, so I'm.
Yeah, I think so.
This is me NIL-ing as hard as I can. But Jimmy, I want to, before we get into predictions, and we'll start obviously with the Iron Bowl and talk about memorable players, and then maybe in the third segment give predictions of other games that will affect Alabama in the playoffs. First of all, Will Rogers apparently is not announced, but it's being reported he's going to enter the transfer portal out of Mississippi State, which I totally get. That place is in shambles right now.
He's given enough. He's given enough to Mississippi State, I think, for 4 years. And that why sit through his next coaching transition? That's just asking too much of the kid.
Yeah, I'm going to look up SEC all-time leading passers, because he's got to be up there. And so I'm going to assume he's going to transfer somewhere in the SEC. Now, I mean, I think some people say, immediately think of Auburn, but I don't know. But I'm going to assume the SEC, because he's number 2. He's only a 800 or so yards behind Aaron Murray. He can obliterate the record if he transfers within the SEC. Now, a lot of people, their mind will go to Auburn. Mine might go to LSU because they'll need a quarterback. That could be interesting.
Myself, first of all, there's a rumor that Will Rogers is going to Southern Miss, and I know that's small potatoes, but his brother plays there. His brother plays there. So his brother plays there. I don't think I think LSU is going to be very content with Garrett Nussmeier. I don't know that LSU is going to portal hunt. They might. There's no way to. I was surprised when they signed Jaden Daniels, so I shouldn't be surprised at anything they do portal-wise. But I think LSU's pretty satisfied with Garrett Nussmeier. Would Will Rogers be an upgrade over Peyton Thorne? I think Hugh Freeze likes having a lot of mobility at quarterback. That's an issue with Will, who's a pocket passer. He's a Mike Leach offense guy, just a passer, gets a ball out. I tell you what, ironically, because Mississippi State has a quarterback from there, I think Vanderbilt's kind of interesting. I don't know about his grades, how that would work.
I just don't get. I mean, look, maybe he does that, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this.
Well, how about Kentucky?
Blow my mind. Kentucky makes sense. Okay,
Kentucky,
I can buy Kentucky. I cannot buy anywhere else. And see, I mean, for me, if you're Will Rogers and you're thinking for the future, okay, he's probably not an NFL quarterback. If he was, he'd be going to the draft. But if you are the SEC all-time leading passer, you know what you are. As long as you aren't, completely terrible at expressing yourself, you are a shoe-in for the SEC network at the very least, and probably higher. Every time they introduce you on ESPN or CBS, SEC all-time leading rusher, Will Rogers, what do you think? Well, I think I'm the SEC all-time leading passer. Back to you. I said rusher, I meant passer. You know what I meant. Anyway, then Evan.
It is interesting. I'm real curious. I do think the market for a 4-year starting quarterback is big. I mean, just the fact that, hey, I'm a 4-year starter in Power 5 football, that's going to garner interest right then and there, even aside from the fact of how successful he's been in terms of attempts and yardage and records. So I do think he's going to be valuable. It'll be interesting to see if he chooses the family and plays from Brandon, Mississippi. Hattiesburg is like an hour away from Brandon. It'll be interesting to see if he chooses the family situation.
All right, and then before we get into predictions, got to bring up Evan Stewart. That is a rumor that's floating out there that he may go in the transfer portal. Some national pundit has said Alabama's the team to beat. I don't know how in the world he could possibly know that. But, of course, me wanting to believe all good news and believing no bad news, I thought, oh, God, I hope he's right. Because me personally, I love Evan Stewart. I would take Evan Stewart in a heartbeat. Will he be expensive through an NIL type of situation? Sure.
No doubt.
But I feel like Evan Stewart is a 5-star plus guy. That's me.
Yeah, it could be a Jermaine Burton type situation. I mean, the SEC to SEC, hey, let's go play at Alabama, who seems to maximize wide receiver value, could be. I'll just say, I'm real curious, as with everyone else, as to what would happen if Evan Stewart entered the portal. I'm not going to rule out that he could end up at Alabama. I'm with Luke in terms of how good I think this kid is. I think he's real good. I also think Alabama is going to be real good at wide receiver next year without him. I mean, I think 2 players I want to specifically name that I think are going to be great players at Alabama next season, Isaiah Bond and Jalen Hale in particular, I think are guys that are primed to make a jump to wide receiver 1 status. They're almost there now. I think clearing out Jermaine Burton, who takes up a lot of oxygen in the room, and is clearly Alabama's go-to receiver this season. I think when Burton clears out and maybe some other guys unclog the depth chart a little bit, I think Bond and Hale will rise to the top of that room. And Alabama's not necessarily going – in other words, Alabama's not going to be wide receiver desperate. That's not how I look at it. But you don't have to be wide receiver desperate to sign an Evan Stewart, because he's going to be the best wide receiver in almost any school he signs with. He would – jump to the top. I mean, I'm a big fan. I think he's got first-round ability, no doubt.
I would also say another wide receiver is going to kick butt at Alabama next year. Ryan Williams.
Oh, and then there's that guy. What I'm curious about Ryan, and we got 1,000 shows to talk about him, I hope. A lot of kids that reclassify do it, in part because of their age. Ryan's not. Ryan is actually the right age for his class or a little younger. I believe that Ryan next fall is still 17 next fall. So I just still think that age is a thing at that age. And I'm real curious to know what a 165-pound 17-year-old, how they fare in the SEC. And I say that as I could not be a bigger fan of his skill set. I've compared the kid to Devontae Smith, and I have since he was in the 9th grade. To me, he's Devontae, who I think might be the best wide receiver that's ever played college football. So we'll see.
All right. We've waited long enough. It's time for predictions when we come back. But right now, I want to tell you about Game Time. Look, if you're thinking about going to the Iron Bowl, get download the Game Time app. You will love this thing. I've used it multiple times. This is not something I'm kidding with y'all about. I used it for a Miami Dolphins game. Used it for the World Series. I'm going to use it for some other games coming up here very shortly. I've used it for basketball games. I used it for the Bama-Tennessee game. I'm telling you, this thing is awesome. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next big event. It should be something you want to enjoy. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. You like Nate Bargatze, the comedian? I love him. You can get tickets through Game Time. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Please go try them out. Really, just try them out. You'll love it. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. $20 off is a lot of money these days. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. You got to go check them out at go download the Game Time app and then use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You get that $20 off. Tell them Lukey sent you. All right, Jimmy, prediction time. Who's going to stand out? I'm going to go first, and I'm going to let you have most of the floor.
No, that's fine.
I forgot what I predicted with Zach, so this is just sort of a new prediction.
Did you pick Alabama with Zach?
I did, and I think I predicted. Here's what Zach predicted: Bama to cover, and I predicted Bama to not cover, meaning 31-17. Let me give you my reasoning. Number one, that place is built on a burial ground of crushed unicorns that were smashed by fallen UFOs, which were shot down by leprechauns with flamethrowers. Weird stuff happens there. I'm going 31-17. I also understand that means Auburn scores more points against Alabama than they did against New Mexico State. I also know that means Alabama only scores as many points as New Mexico State did. This is going to be different. Auburn's going to play very, very differently than they did against New Mexico State. They're going to give us all they got. The crowd is going to be a factor. The crowd was not a factor against New Mexico State. I want to pick Alabama to cover because I watched Zach Blackerby and Jake Crane, J-Boy, who does he does a good show. It's more national, but he spends a ton of time on Auburn for some reason. I know he went to Auburn and his dad did. But
because he's an Auburn guy.
He is an Auburn guy, but when you go national,
Yeah, you should be a national guy.
But he had this whole spiel yesterday about how Auburn's never scared of Alabama and yada, yada, yada. And part of it's sort of like, come on, man. And part of it's true. Part of it is true. Auburn is the least affected by Alabama's dominance of any team we face. Because other teams, now LSU might have the more talent to go toe-to-toe with us. But you can tell we've put the fear of God in LSU at times over this run. I don't know that we ever really put the fear of God in Auburn. Even in 2012, that Auburn team was so bad, I don't count it. 2015, Derrick Henry had this long string of touchdown rushes. He didn't get it till the last play of the game, essentially, where he broke off a fourth down run that we were just trying to run the clock out. And he had 284 yards that day, by the way. He had 284 yards and no touchdowns till the last play.
That's weird. That's almost weird. That's hard to do.
So my point is Auburn takes a lot of pride in the fact that they're not afraid of Alabama's dominance. And I do respect that. I think that it's going to be something where Auburn is going to play us very tough. Alabama's going to have a lead most of the game, if not the entire game, and it's going to be arm's length, but it's never going to be insurmountable, which means the crowd's going to be in it the entire time. But I think in the end, it's like 28-17. Will Reichert kicks a field goal. It sort of takes the air out of the balloon, and then Alabama gets it back and sits on the lead, and they go to the house. I will take 31-17 all day long. I don't care that we don't cover. I'm all about it. Just give me the win. Let me get out of here. Let me worry about Georgia. I think Jalen Milroe has a nice day, not a great day. I think that a running back steps up. Don't know who to say that'll be. A running back has a nice day for Alabama. I'm going to say close to 100 yards.
Jonathan Bennett.
Boy, that would be – it's out of the blue, bro.
I was just trying to name a running back that we never talk about, and I think he's next up after Justice and Alabama's best walk-on running back until Cole Gamble gets here. Luke's prediction was extremely specific. I'll be more general and say Alabama wins 34-13. I think Auburn is going to have some more successes than Alabama would like because they will play hard, and it won't be the same Auburn team that played New Mexico State. And they will have some success on the ground, I think, with the quarterbacks and to some extent with Jarquez Hunter. I think they'll have enough success to kind of keep the game interesting for a while. But by late in the game, Alabama's plethora of playmakers that Auburn doesn't have, and a quarterback that can hurt you with his arm and his legs is too much. And Alabama sort of wins pulling away 34-13 and then gets to, in my mind, this sounds crazy, but one of the biggest games of the Saban era in my mind next week against Georgia.
I do think this is one of the biggest games of the Saban era. And I mean, because it is the game where Saban can say, I'm not dead, y'all. And if Georgia even wins by one, the narrative is going to be, the king is dead, long live the king. And meaning Kirby Smart on the second part of the king. Yeah. And if Saban were to win, I think the narrative will be he's the GOAT. He's always going to be the GOAT, and he's goated up again. So you're absolutely right. But we got all next week to talk about that, Jimmy. And what I really want to see happen, by the way, I really want Will Reichert to get his points. I know my prediction basically says 4 extra points and a field goal. That would be 7 more points. He'd be 5 points away from the all-time record. I would really love to see Will Reichert get more than that because I would love for him to, I told Zach, I was kidding with him. I said, what's going to happen in this game, right? Will Reichert is going to be lining up for a field goal to either put the game out of reach or to win it or whatever. And y'all are going to put a replay of the kick six on the giant jumbotron and try and distract him. And, I kind of get it, but I'm going to tell you something. And the kick six has never really super bothered me. I think Auburn fans think it bothers Alabama fans so much like sticks in our craw. It doesn't. I mean, I look at it like that's just such a bizarre thing. I mean, what can you do? I mean, it's sort of like the band is out on the field for Stanford Cal. But, man, they're milking this thing like you've never milked anything before. And I get it. I mean, it's an iconic play.
I don't get angry about it. I think it's one of the great plays in college football history. And I think it's not cool. Cool is not the right term, but it's one of the great plays in all of college football history. And Alabama was a part of it. Not the good part of it, but, hey, it's history.
It's funny. I mean, if you go to any of the Auburn message boards, a lot of the moderators are posting things like, well, give us your memories of the kick six. I'm like, please, Alabama, don't ever get to a point where when we're about to play our rival that all we can talk about is something good that happened 10 years ago. I don't want to get to that point.
I was real quiet for a while. I remember that happened. I was like, shock wasn't the right word. I understood what happened.
Yeah. No, I understood it.
But I was unable to speak or formulate many thoughts. I was just, the people around me were like, wait, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Maybe we could do that to Georgia because, really the circumstances are kind of the same where Georgia's going for a three-peat. There's no doubt in my mind if we win that game, we three-peat. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I even think to some extent the 2013 team was better than the 2011 and 2012 teams in some ways. In some ways they were better. I think we were missing some dudes on defense that hurt us some. But, I think had Alabama beaten Auburn, they would have won the national championship. And who knows? I also think this, gosh, if we want to play the what if we'd won 3 in a row, would Nick Saban have retired even 10 years ago, just going what
What else
more
can
can
I
I do? And who knows? I think TV was more of a real possibility for Nick Saban back then than it is now in terms of a big draw for him. Yeah, boy, Kick Six changed a lot, but I never get mad about it. I just, hey, we've had enough huge. If we didn't have all the successes that Alabama's had, maybe it would affect me more. But we've won 6 national championships since 2009, and just so
It's hard to
many
be
huge
mad.
wins. Yeah,
And
we've had some successes.
you talk about Garth Brooks in this thing. I mean, sometimes you thank God for unanswered prayers. I mean, everybody loves to go, man, we almost had Tebow. I'm like, thank God we didn't have Tebow.
Yeah, because that could have changed things. But I would say this: after the Kick Six, Auburn has not won. They did not win a national championship in 2013. They played for it, but they didn't win it in 2013 and haven't won a national championship since. Alabama won the national championship in 2015, 2017, 2020. Played for it again in 2021. Played for it in 2016. I mean, I'm just saying it's the Kick Six did nothing in terms of affecting Alabama's trajectory.
Yeah, and they've lost 4 games at least 4 games every single year since then. So it's in a way, it really does sort of sum up the two programs, because Auburn is like they're in love with the Kick Six, and I don't blame them.
I get it.
But if you ask me, could I have the Kick Six iconic moment, or could I have Alabama's success since then? Which one do I want? I want what we got.
I'll watch 2nd and 26 1,000 more times before I get bored of it. So
I mean, again, I get it. And it is. I mean, I hate to admit this. It's up there as one of the most iconic plays in NCAA history. It's definitely
along with 2nd and 26 and some other things.
2nd 26, I think is the best national championship play of all time. I don't know how you can top that. I mean, outside of a literal Hail Mary, I don't know how you could top that.
No, I couldn't agree more.
So, all right. So we both got Bama winning. Let's see how it ends up. And, may the best team win as long as it's us. And roll tide, everybody. We will be here after the game, right, Jimmy? Are you going?
I'm not going to the game. I will be watching in Tuscaloosa at the house. So, yeah, I will be available post game. And if Alabama wins, forget that 24-hour rule. We're going to talk a lot about Georgia.
You got that right. All right, buddy. Roll tide until tomorrow.
Roll tide.